Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Natasha Kipper, and I'm the Training Services Manager at Cubic AMF. Thank you for joining us today for Part 1 discussion of league bowling considerations and accommodations for the new guidelines and restrictions. As always, we want to continue helping you and your staff prepare for reopening, with this week's focus being on league bowling. Today, we're going to share ideas and suggestions on how to adapt the structure of leagues to account for some of the restrictions and guidelines currently in place. We know that many of you are wondering if you will be able to have competitive leagues or league bowling in any capacity. What will this new concept look like? Please keep in mind, every center is located in a different region and different market, which will result in a unique situation for all of us. There won't be a one-size-fits-all kind of situation, and what may work for one center or one type of league may not work for the rest. So please just keep that in mind. It is our goal to provide you as many options as we can for you to be able to choose what may work best for you and your business. Before we deep dive into this very popular topic, we have a lot of folks joining us here today. Let me introduce you to our experts today. Brian Kane is with us today again. Many of you know Brian from attending our previous webinars. He's an owner-operator of a bowling center in Pennsylvania, Kane's Lanes, and also the senior scoring technology expert here at Cubic AMF. With many decades of experience in the bowling industry, Brian has been an invaluable asset to our company, our teams, and our customers and the bowling community. And today's special guest with us is Lance Rasmussen. Lance is the president of CDE Software, which is the industry leader in competitive bowling software and the developer of BLS, BTM, and TBRAC. Lance has been with the company for over 25 years and brings a tremendous amount of expertise and knowledge in the field. He has kindly agreed to join us today and share with all of us some of the considerations for league bowling and how BLS is going to handle it within their software. Lance has been working closely with USBC and also our teams here at Cubic AMF to provide solutions that our customers can leverage in the upcoming weeks and months. Welcome, Lance.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, thank you so much again for joining us today. Lance, over the past few weeks, we have had a lot of talk about what league bowling is going to look like in the post-pandemic world, let's call it. A lot of our owner-operators and league bowlers have had a lot of questions on what can we do in terms of following the proper guidelines for physical and social distancing while still enjoying league play. I know you have been quite busy working on this topic, and can you share with us today some of the methods and ideas for that physical and social distancing in league bowling?
Sure, and just to kind of reiterate what you said earlier is that this is not a one-size-fits-all. Again, every local jurisdiction is going to be different across the country. So obviously it's going to be a goal to try to find a social distance method that's going to work with your particular center in your jurisdiction, as well as what works well with your particular league, because each league may not be the same in your own center as well.
Absolutely.
And also I'll preface too, for home secretaries using our software, they're not going to have as much of a challenge as the folks that have the scoring system edition of BLS. So this is where we're going to see a little bit more challenges. So in terms of the different social distance methods, some of the methods that we've identified so far has been what we kind of call the dark pair social distancing option, which is just simply skipping pairs. So if 1 versus 2 is on lane 1 and 2, then teams 3 and 4 would be skipping a pair, so they would be on 5 and 6. And this would work great if you have enough lanes. And you do bowl the normal traditional league play of alternating lanes. So this is attractive in that aspect. And in our software, we actually can support this method. But there is a disadvantage in that, you know, if you're a smaller center, you may not have enough pairs, which then would lead to having to adjust yourself into having a couple shifts for a league, which would traditionally normally be 1. Another method that we've identified is what we call a single lane split shift social distance option. So this is where odd teams would come in on the first shift and only bowl on the odd lane and not alternate lanes. And then after they have completed bowling, the second shift would come in and the even teams would come in to bowl on the even lane. For those that, again, have been seeing the announcement from USBC, this is what they have discussed as being an emergency option. But again, the key word is option. USBC is not making it a requirement. They are just simply accommodating this particular social distance option for the ability to sanction that league and awards that are bowled.
Mm-hmm.
For the advantage of this particular method is that with the teams only bowling on the odd lane at first, that means that when the second shift comes in, you don't have to redress the lanes. The even teams are going to have essentially that fresh oil. So this can be quite advantageous, as well as reduce costs in your lane maintenance. The disadvantage is just some minor steps that need to be done with BLS and your front desk system. So depending on your front desk system, you may have to make a couple of adjustments in handling that. A third method is basically the same concept I just mentioned. It's just that instead of bowling on a single lane, your odd teams would bowl in traditional pair format, and they would bowl. Then when they're done, the even teams come in, and then they would bowl in traditional alternating lane format. This works great in that people are used to bowling in alternating lanes, and so that doesn't change anything. The disadvantage of this, of course, is that the lanes are going to break down after that first shift. So you have to make a choice of either having a gap to redress the lanes, or making the decision to say that if you're in the second shift, it's going to be a little more a tough situation, but it roughly works itself out evenly across the season as far as who's in the first and who's in the second shifts.
Sure, because we're assuming that the same teams will not be bowling in one or the other shift all the time. Sometimes they would be in first shift, sometimes second shift, correct?
Correct. Is it going to be down to the science of being absolutely a 50-50? No, because we still follow the USBC schedule. But
Right.
then again, you could manipulate the schedule if somebody has the time and effort to do that math to set up a schedule that has a 50-50.
Sure, makes sense.
Um, the another method is what we call a single lane, single shift social distancing. Again, not too much different than from that bowling just on the odd lanes, bowling just on the even lanes. The difference is that everybody comes in and everybody bowls on the odd lane, or everybody comes in and everybody bowls on the even lane, which this would work fine if you have enough lanes to be able to accommodate this. Your smaller centers probably wouldn't. But this does allow everybody to bowl. But again, too, in your larger houses, potentially you may not want to dedicate that many lanes for that league. So it is an ability that you could look at for an option, but it does have that disadvantage. And then another method that has been discussed has been what we call extended pair social distancing. And this is where you do spread the league out and you do bowl in traditional pair mode. So you do alternate each lane, or each frame. But what would happen is that team one would go on 1 and 2, for example, on the first week of league. But team two, rather than starting on lane 2, they would actually be moved to the 3 and 4. So you would have one team per pair. So this spreads the league out. So the advantage is, hey, you're bowling in pair mode, so people understand how to do that. But the disadvantage is that if you're a large center, you may not want to accommodate that many lanes dedicated for that league. Or if you're a smaller center, you may not have the number of lanes to accommodate that. So you would have to move into a split shift situation as well. And a couple of these things too, the functionality in our league software does not currently accommodate giving these instructions to the scoring system. So, but this is some stuff that we're looking at and implementing in our upcoming BLS 2021 here in August. We have one other method that we've identified, and I'm going to turn over to Brian Kane to discuss this concept that he had kind of brought up.
So the other alternative that I've been considering, and I spoke about it in a couple of the other webinars that we have ran as Cubic AMF in the last couple of weeks, is a split team, split shift option, where basically you would split the players from each of the two teams playing each other to come in for first shift, and then the remaining players would bowl then on the second shift later after the first shift finished. So basically, if you had let's say that you have a 4-man team, you could take 2 players from each team, which would give you the 4 players to play on that either pair or single lane, depending upon how you're breaking it down. The big thing with this is I had a lot of feedback from some of my leagues when I spoke to them in regards to the competitive aspect. A lot of them seem to be concerned with when one team bowls and then the second team comes in later and bowls, not having quite that interaction between the teams that you normally have during league play. So in this aspect, doing a split team, split shift option, the nice thing is you would still have basically part of the 2 teams playing the first shift, and then the remainder of the teams playing, or the remainder of the team players playing against each other again then on the second shift. The bad part with this entire layout is there's probably going to be some stuff on the back end manually that's going to have to be done by the center in order to accommodate this type of an option. But the nice thing is with doing something like this, especially for like your scratch league bowlers that really feel like they play at a higher level when they're actually able to play against another opponent or someone that's very good like them, they feel like they have more competition going on and feel like they play more at a much better level than if just myself or my team bowls and then later another team bowls against us that we really aren't competing with other than just our scores at the end of the night. So this is another option that we have been looking at.
Awesome, Brian. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing this. Even to me right now, this sounds like just like a ton of information, and not only figuring out which which option would be best, but also trying to figure out how to manage the software on both Concur and BLS end. Lance, I would like to point our participants to the resource that we have on your website, where you very nicely outlined and described all of these options, and also some of the steps that need to be taken to adjust some settings within the league itself in BLS. Let me pull that up on the screen here real quickly. And it's right here. Lance, can you walk us through this document and what our customers can find in here in terms of information?
Sure. The website that was brought up is our help center, which is support.cdesoftware.com. And you can bring up this document by going to our knowledge base. And then probably the easiest thing to do is just search for the word social. And that'll bring up the topic, social distancing configurations with BLS 2020. At the top, there is a link to the PDF of the document. This is a living document, so we are constantly kind of updating this. In fact, I updated this earlier this morning. So we again reiterate with the state and local requirements, everybody's going to be unique. And then again with USBC, they're just simply have modified the rules to try to accommodate what may be allowed in your particular jurisdiction. And then we iterate again too, is that some of these modes may not be natively available in BLS and may require some effort in how you work with the scoring system, or it may be a combination of both. But we do list at the start the dark pair method that I mentioned. We use kind of an example of having 10 teams bowling traditionally on lanes 1 through 10. And so within each of these distancing options, we kind of give you an idea of what this looks like there. So we do have, again, the dark pair social distancing. And this one is the most easily set up in BLS. There's been a concept that some of you may have used in your center, particularly if your center is a split center design, where you may have 1 through 16 on the left side of the house and 17 through 32 on the other end of the house. And in a horseshoe fashion. That happens to be a center that I bowl in. And if you're going to force everybody to be on one side of the building, you could say in BLS that we want 1 through 6 to be used, and then the remaining teams to be like 24 through 32. So yeah, we give you the configuration instructions here on how to do that within BLS. So it's very much the same concept. You're just going into the program, into the lane assignments, and reassigning a pair of lanes to be shifted to a different pair. And so once you make that change, then that's it on BLS's side. And then from Concur's aspect, there's no changes that need to be done that I'm aware of. So this is kind of the simplest, if you will. And if that works with your particular social distancing rules, it won't be one I'd highly recommend because it's pretty much out of the box.
Right, very little manual adjusting, if at all, after each night. Also for those centers, I know we've had quite a few customers that have smaller centers, but their leagues are quite large. So one league would have to bowl 2 shifts as it is to be able to accommodate them because of the limited number of lanes. So kind of the same concept would be applied in some of these situations where people are considering having more than 1 shift for each league. As a matter of fact, we've actually quite a few questions that came in prior to this webinar But one of them is, can the system be manipulated to create a single standing sheet with wins and losses using two-shift format where each team bowls on a pair of lanes?
The you can currently in BLS designate a league to be in divisions, and so you could have a division that would all bowl on shift 1, and then another division that would be all in shift 2. So that could be whether it be a early and late shift or a Monday and a Tuesday shift. So we've always supported that particular concept. And then in terms of 1 versus 2, you'd still have that traditional play. The only thing that may happen is maybe difficult is splitting those 2 shifts into further shifts of odd and even lanes. So
Right.
that may be a little tricky in that regards. But with having 2 divisions, you do have options in BLS under the team division rules that indicate whether or not you want the standings to be based on divisions, your high scores to be based on divisions. The only thing that would be a requirement in BLS is we give you an option to be able to say you assign who's in what division. So you would go to the team rosters and just go down the list and say you're in 1, you're in 2, you're in 1, you're in 2. But in order to accommodate teams only bowling in their division, which is what this would have to be, you would have to use the option to say let BLS divide the league in divisions, and you would then just indicate going, okay, there's 8 teams in Division 1 and the remaining 8 are in Division 2, which then in that case teams 1 through 8 are Division 1 and 9 through 16 are Division 2.
Division 2. Yep.
Okay, that makes sense. Can we, Gregory asked here, can we install plexiglass between the adjoining back-to-back seating configurations and then bowlers can proceed as usual? That's kind of a tricky question. Brian, what do you think?
Again, it's going to depend on every area, what the social distancing rules are, how tight your state is going to be on, the social distancing aspect. Some states might allow it, some states might not. Again, it's really going to depend on your area. There's going to be some areas where those centers might not even be allowed to open until they get to a specific phase. Like here in Pennsylvania, we can't even open until we get to green, and they don't even have the criteria yet for the green stage. So again, we don't really know to be able to say yes or no. It's really going to depend on the rules in your area.
Yeah, and the rules have been quite vague so far. So, it's really hard to answer those kind of questions because we ourselves are not 100% clear. And then on top of that, it all depends on the area.
Correct.
Like Brian said, good point. Okay, Brian's asking, using the dark pair split squad, can it support 24 teams in a 24-lane house? First squad 1, 2, 5, and 6, and so on, and second squad 3, 4, 7, 8. So the opposite from the first shift.
Yes, that should be accommodable within BLS. In the lane assignment screen, you would first off set up your pairs at the top of the screen so that you would reassign the lanes appropriately, and then you would go into the splits or the shifts area of the lane assignment screen and indicate you have 2 shifts. I'd have to verify in terms of whether or not it's going to want to require that the second shift start on the lanes that you set up for the first shift. I think you can change that part for the second shift, but I don't have a definitive yes or no there. So that would take some testing.
Yeah, and I can't say 100% as well. I know that realistically you can usually change the teams, but whether or not the second squad would be required to use the exact same lanes, I can't think off the top of my head if it forces you to do that or not.
If I remember correctly, I think you get to choose which lane they want to start on for the second shift, but I don't know if you can, you know, manipulate from then on, meaning, you know, lanes 3 and 4 and then 7 and 8. That I'm not
Right,
sure.
Yeah,
right,
you'd have to
right.
have two sets of lane pairings at the top, one for each set that you're able to set. And I can't remember off the top of my head, like Lance, if that's there or not.
Right, and and I'm just making a quick check in there, but yes, you do have the ability to indicate what the starting lane is of your second shift or third shift. If you know, there's some leagues over the years where we've seen an 18-team league bowl in a 6-lane house. And so you would have 3 shifts, but we do have the option to indicate the starting lane there. So within that, it may be a possibility. It's something we'll certainly do some testing here, and you're certainly welcome, Brian, to test that kind of as well.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, Jim's asking, are instructions basically the same if you're running the most current version of BLS 2019?
Yes, we can't. We haven't really gone back into the previous BLSs to really get exactly that. I know that some of it's a little different in that in BLS 2020 we had reorganized our menus to allow us to have a simplified menu structure and nest things to just make things a lot more easier than we did in the prior few generations. I'll mention this, Jim, in that we did announce that we are running promotions with our taking the pre-orders for 21, and if you did purchase your upgrade to 20, now you would get the 21 in August for free. So it is a good opportunity. And then if you're a center who's used, you know, just haven't upgraded in quite a number of years, we are offering an amnesty upgrade discount that you can certainly reach out to our sales team to help yourself get a lower price.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lance, for sharing that, for sure. All right, we're considering having each bowler bowl 2 frames before they switch. Can that be handled in Concur and BLS? For sure, it can be handled in Concur. Brian, can you elaborate on that option, having for each bowler to bowl 2 frames before they switch to the next bowler?
Yes, so this is actually a setting that would be in your lane option set. You have the option in there to set how many frames are basically played before the next bowler comes up. You can either set it's either 1, 2, or 5. And then what would happen is, depending on that rule, it would make each player as they got up bowl by that rule. That rule was actually added way back in version 1 of Conqueror, and it was designed for the seniors, where the seniors couldn't get up every single frame. So it allowed them to bowl 2 or 5 frames to have a little bit of rest in between each time that they had to physically get up to bowl. So realistically, this could be enabled as well.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And then Lance, how does that work in BLS?
There isn't any settings in BLS that accommodate this particular situation. So that would be done strictly from the front desk point of view.
Yeah, so a couple of the things, guys, to keep in mind is some of the settings that are specific from BLS in order for the rules and things to happen. The settings in Conquer are for the way the actual scoring and the play is happening on the lane. So keep in mind that even though there's some settings in BLS, there's also some settings that are specific to Conquer. At the end of the day, though, when that information goes back and forth for the scores, then those things don't really come into play. BLS will just be looking for the score file coming back from the desk.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that, Brian. That's definitely a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, guys, Bill Ross has raised his hand, and as you know, we typically don't unmute participants to ask questions and stuff. We ask them to submit them via the chat feature. But Bill, if you want to go ahead, actually, I'm going to unmute you right now. You can go ahead and comment or ask your question.
No, I'm sorry. I must have hit the wrong button. Sorry about that.
Oh, you didn't want to say anything? Well,
Oh, sorry about that.
you're already unmuted. You can if you
No
just
problem.
kidding. No problem. Sounds good. Okay. With that being said, Brian, I want to go back to you, and you said something to me the other day as you were kind of brainstorming and trying to come up with some of the ways on how to best accommodate your league bowlers. You had mentioned that you came up with a couple of different ideas and you were bouncing some things around, and then you went and talked to some of your league bowlers, particularly from your more competitive leagues, because that was one of your concerns, that some of these accommodations may not be so popular amongst your league bowlers. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What was their reaction, and how did the whole conversation go?
So the big thing that started it was when you look at a lot of the different options in regards to what we have to do for the social distancing, it almost feels as though you're in like a pre-bowl type of situation, because you're going to have one team that plays and their scores are done. And then after we're completely finished and we don't know any wins or losses yet, the next team is then going to come in and bowl. And then they're going to put their scores against ours to determine wins and losses. So of course, as you guys know, a lot of times with league bowlers, they can be very particular. So they just felt like you might not have the fairness there that you would normally have. So, I mean, we still have some leagues that don't allow pre-bowling, and I'm sure most of the centers out there are the same way. We've tried to accommodate as many bowlers as we can anymore, because we know there's a lot going on and most people have jobs and everything else today. So we try to accommodate, but we still do have, especially scratch leagues, that they just don't want to allow that pre-bowling type of situation. So the pushback I was getting was that this layout is almost, you know, thinking of some of these options, is almost like a pre-bowl type of situation. And are you going to oil the lanes in between squads, because the oil pattern is going to change because there was already games played on it. So there's lots of things that were coming up, and that's where I started to come up with that whole concept of maybe letting the teams bowl together but splitting them, so that we can keep the social aspect on a single lane, or a double lane if they allow us to do it, but being able to have enough room in the facility to do the social distancing. And in this case, you know, a lot of them were saying, okay, so if we bowled first shift on a 2x2 or a 3x3 type of player situation, really the bowlers that would come in on the second shift, maybe you don't even have to oil, because they're all going to still be playing team against team for those remaining bowlers. So we were looking at a lot of those type of different situations. And the other concern, obviously, was the timing, because we know that it's going to take a little bit more time to complete a single league when you have to split into shifts. And realistically, probably going to be in a situation where you almost have to get everyone cleared out of the bowling center before the next group comes in order to maintain that social distancing. So you know there's going to be a little bit more time there, especially with the cleaning. So we were trying to come up with ways that we could cut down as much time as possible, still keep that interaction of the teams playing against teams, and not have to worry about them feeling like it was always going to be some type of a pre-bowl situation. So that was really how that conversation started.
Nice. Were they open to your suggestions on how to handle some of these things?
Actually, most of them are. I mean, we and I'm sure most of the centers that are here joining us today have already spoken to some of their bowlers. No matter what we do, we know that there's going to be some bowlers that we're not going to be able to make happy. I mean, unfortunately, that is a true case. My biggest thing is just to try to accommodate as many as possible, so the amount of actual league players that we lose at my facility is not going to be hopefully significant. That is the biggest thing, is to make the accommodations as easy as possible to maintain and keep the folks that we have coming this year while all this is going on.
Sure, and I think a lot of folks that's their goal as well, because, we don't, obviously everybody's trying to do anything possible, everything they can to make sure, all of their league bowlers come back. And we've heard over, several weeks now that league bowlers have been, waiting to get back to bowling. They've been missing going to the bowling center, bowling on leagues, practicing and all those kind of things. And, when you look at any bowling center, variety of leagues that they have, like what even Lance mentioned earlier, not every league is going to be the same, right? And some of these things you may have, different variations of these options applicable to different leagues, whichever one you find, to be best solution for your center, you may not be able to apply it to every single league, maybe most of them, and then your most competitive league may want to, see something different. So I think it's going to be important to not only consider what these options are, but to also carefully think which one is going to fit which league. Because
Correct.
there may be a couple of different options you may want to try at your center. Brian, I like what you particularly did with your scratch league. I feel like when you talk to your bowlers and you present these options or solutions with them, even if you ask them, maybe they have something they would like to see that you might have not thought of, I think that's going to go a long way as well to show good faith, and you're really trying to accommodate everybody and do it in the safe and responsible manner, so that way everybody can return and enjoy your facility the same way they did before. So
Right.
I feel like there's a lot to be said about that.
Right. Well, we also know that there's always some leagues, and most of the houses have them, where they just have some really strange rules or are worried about different things. So they put a lot of roadblocks in the way. And realistically, it's going to take a lot more conversation on the proprietor and the bowling center's part to those leagues to get them to make some adjustments in the way they're doing things for this next year, maybe even, we don't know, 2 years, say, so that we can still continue to get them to bowl without having to make it be a nightmare, basically, for the bowling center and the league both. And I think that whole conversation piece, as you talked about, Natasha, I think that is a big starting point, is letting them know that you're thinking about them, you're trying to come up with ways that is going to help their league and them continue to have fun, but more than anything, be able to do it in a safe way so that not everybody is concerned about it. And I think that more than anything, that's what all of us are looking to do, is to get business back in the doors, but to make sure that we do it in a way that we can keep everybody safe and everybody feeling secure. Because if we can't do that piece of it, then nobody's going to come. And I think that that is going to be the key, is making sure we make everyone feel safe and not have to worry about being in our facilities.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%.
I'll
Okay.
also add to that too is being aware of what kind of some of these distance options are, and what some of the limitations are between, that may be, whether it be from a scoring side or from BLS side or for both. If you try to at least keep abreast of what your options are, or if you're working with a league who says, well, I think we want to do this, first make sure obviously that it fits within your local rules, government rules, but also, say, what, let me double check with the team at Cubica and BLS to see if that's something that can be accomplished easily. Because if you've got something that is so bizarre that is going to leave you with the only ability of typing in scores the next day, you may not want that And so, but there may be another option that you can kind of coach the league, whether it be at a league meeting or talking with a couple of the key people there in the league to kind of say, this one would be really nice and easy to do, and here's the benefits, plus it's easy, and your names and stuff like that. So kind of arming yourself with that information to keep your bowlers happy, but also keep you happy
Right.
or your league processor happy.
And also, as Lance pointed out, the main thing is just to let them know that that it is temporary. We don't hope to continue to have this as the type of situation that we're in. So we just need to accommodate for maybe a year.
Yeah.
And that's the key thing to really get everyone that you speak to understand is this is not a permanent situation. It's a way for us to continue to bowl and have fun while this is going on, and then we can get back to normal as quick as we can.
Absolutely. Excellent points. Thank you, Lance, for bringing that up as well. That's very important. Okay, couple more questions. Let me see. Laura is asking, we're running lanes, one team per pair, rotating lanes with teams not to exceed number of lanes in-house. Can Conquer and BLS handle? Brian, can you address this one?
I mean, in this situation, if you're doing one team per pair, again, there's going to be some changes that would be required in order to do that. But realistically, once that happens, it would be able to do it. So realistically, in one of the concepts that we came up with, this would certainly be capable of being done.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay, Henry's asking if we do the split shifts, can we alternate who bowls early week one and then the late next week and then alternate thereafter? This would have to be done manually, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead,
BLS is going to, is out of the box, follows the USBC schedule for lane assignments. And so you're going to normally be splitting, for example, if it's a 16 lane league and you're an 8 lane house, you would say that shift 1 is 1 through 8, and then 9 through 16 are the second shift on 1 through 8. So depending on where your team falls in the USBC schedule, you might be in first shift for the first 3 weeks, and then second shift for 2, and then alternating back and forth for a couple of weeks. So it's going to be nilly-willy. Now, are you, if you are a sanctioned league, are you required to follow that USBC schedule? No. That is simply just a default schedule that's been provided by USBC that BLS has implemented in there to make it easy to assign teams to lanes throughout the season. But you're certainly welcome to do the math and work up your own schedule.
Sure. Along those lines, Stacy is asking, what if we start the league with one of the social distancing option and then halfway through our state relaxes everything? Is there a way to go back to normal? Or in your opinion, should we continue with the options that were started? Brian, what do you think?
Well, that's really going, at that point, once it has started, I think that's probably going to be a league decision. That's where you're going to have to sit down with all the captains and maybe the entire league and make that decision on, do we stop with wins and losses where we're at now and start our regular league going forward with the remaining weeks and change the way we do wins and losses based upon what was there for the start of the season and the end of the season? It's really going to be dependent mainly on what the league at that point is going to determine as to what they feel the most comfortable with.
See, your answer is a lot more sophisticated. I was thinking more along the lines, hey, they say you can go back, business as usual. I'm going to say, let's go back.
Not quite so easy since you've already started and already
Yes.
have things in the way that they've been played so far. So that's where you're going to have to almost leave it to be a league decision at that point, or that's something that you would want to point out up front with your leagues. If you're thinking that that could be the situation, then you might want to say, what do we want to do if this happens? That would certainly be a good starting point so that you feel more comfortable if that case does come up.
Sure,
Completely.
that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's being upfront and saying, hey, this is the possibility, because it may be, hey, January, I wouldn't surprise me if things are allowed back to normal. So have that ahead of time as a plan going,
Mhm.
you know, once it's lifted, we will continue to do this for this season and change the rules next season. Okay,
Right.
great. Or go back. To a lot of degree, it may not really make that much difference bowling one way for half the season the other. But again, you'll have your mileage will vary.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think
Stacy,
also
excellent
what could
question.
happen is
Sorry,
if you
Brian.
have a split season. So if you have a split season and you're still a few weeks, you know, till that split, you may be finished the layout the way you are doing it now. And when that first part of the season ends, then you change and go to what you want to do as your normal league situation for the second half of the season, or even thirds, depending upon how the league's laid out. So those are some of the things that realistically you're going to have to cover with each and every league.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay, let me ask you this. Existing leagues that are waiting to continue can make lanes adjust the lane assignments in the BLS. Can they do that?
If this is an existing league that had to stop at week 28 out of 32 due to COVID closure, and then have voted to come back to complete the remaining 4 or 5, 6 weeks, whatever. If that needs to be moved to different lanes, you just go to the lane assignments and reassign the lanes. Now, if they're going to implement a social distance method of like what's been discussed here, that's going to vary depending on which method you choose of being supported out of the box. Or again, no matter what, the worst case scenario is you do things manually.
Yes, for a
Right.
few weeks.
Yeah, and if there are only, handful of weeks left, then, it's not that, big of a undertaking. Okay, how do we set schedules and print recap sheets using every other lane? Does that change anything?
When you're in terms of with the if you're going to use the dark pair mode and readjust the lane assignments, the recap sheets should follow with no issue. The lane assignments on the standing sheet should look appropriate. So that's been something, again, that's been supported out of the box for quite some time.
Right.
But if you're going to adopt a odd lane only for first shift and even for the next shift, or then again, the lane assignments are really going to be about the same, so that shouldn't be any different. But if you're going to go to a team one bowls on pair 1 and 2 and their opponent bowls on 3 and 4, that's not supported currently in BLS, and there's no way to manipulate the lane assignments, recap sheets, standing sheets to reflect that. So it's time for the magic marker.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, some of these things are going to be more challenging to manage in those terms, for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lance, for answering that. Okay, here's a good one. Ryan's asking, couldn't it help having all league bowlers required to wear masks? Now, this is, there are, I think, several answers to this question. It will all depend on really your local regulations. Do they require to wear masks to begin with or no? Does wearing a mask change how many people can be in a certain area at the same time? Especially those that are not, from the same household. And we really have no easy way to answer this question because it's going to vary so much across the board. Like even in, you know, location where I'm at, only one store requires people to wear a mask. Nobody else does.
Right.
You know, so
And
go ahead, Brian.
usually wearing a mask doesn't change the rules on any of the social distancing anyways.
Yes.
Here in Pennsylvania, you're required to wear a mask. All employees and anyone coming into the facility must have them. But that doesn't change the rules in regards to how many people can be in the building or how far the social distancing has to be from one another.
A league certainly could choose to have in their bylaws, like, and I could see this especially for probably senior leagues, where they could actually put a bylaw in for this upcoming season that says all bowlers in this league must wear a mask.
Yep.
And this is no different than saying everybody must wear a team shirt.
Correct.
Right.
And but like Brian said, that's not going to shift or make any changes to what the local ordinances are going to be.
Yeah, from a center perspective, I have not seen anywhere yet that says these are the guidelines, but if patrons wear a mask, you can change it to something else.
Because keep in mind, the purpose of wearing the mask, or so we're told, is not for my protection, but it's if I have it, it's to prevent me from giving it to you. So it's not really changing the social distancing because I'm safer if I have the mask on. The whole purpose of that mask is to keep me, if I have it, from trying to give it to anybody else if I cough or sneeze.
Yeah, and you're 100% correct, Brian, but along the same lines, then shouldn't I then be safer if you're wearing a mask?
Nobody knows.
Therefore, I can be closer to you. I mean, we don't know. These guidelines and regulations.
Contact, right?
Huh?
So if I'm closer to you, the whole idea behind the social distancing is that not only from the breathing with the mask perspective, but that we don't touch each other. So if we're right next to each other and I touch you and have something on my hands, that's the whole purpose behind keeping the 6-foot social distancing, is so that we're not touching one another.
But even
High
if
fives.
you touch me,
Right,
you know,
exactly. High fives. Those will be out.
yeah. Even if you touch my hand, nothing's going to happen unless I, you know, anyway, do
Scratch
something.
your nose because it itches.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, we can go down this rabbit hole for a while here. I don't think that's our goal, but unfortunately, we don't have the answers to that question. And
Right.
at this point in time, I'm, you know, hard pressed to find somebody who would. Okay. Laura's asking, will the methods presented earlier on the screen be available for us to print and use where applicable? Laura, good question once again, and yes. These resources are available to you. You can go to support.cdesoftware.com. In fact, I'm gonna type it in right now, and this is going to take us to, actually you're gonna go to knowledge base. Let's see if I listened to Lance earlier. And if you just simply click social, your social distancing configuration for BLS 2020 is going to be one of the first things that's going to pop up. And this is the screen that I showed earlier as well.
There's a printable document up top, yep.
Yes, if you click on here, the PDF, it's going to, like Lance said, up an actual PDF. As you can tell, I've, you know, opened many of them. So then that way you can save it on your computer, print it, do whatever you need to do with it. And like Lance said earlier, this document is forever changing at this current time as we are working out new different options and ways to overcome some of these challenges. So keep checking it. For any changes that may be made. And along those lines, Lance, I have included here help@cdesoftware.com for any questions that our customers may have after this webinar. And also if there are any ideas that they think may work or have worked for them very well, if they want to share it with us. so we can share it with the rest of the community. I know you mentioned to me yesterday that's welcome as well.
Absolutely. And this is even in regards to anything at all. So if there are features that you'd like to see BLS handle, some things that are going on in your leagues where they've wanted to do a certain rule or something to pose there, just send us an email with feature requests as the subject line, and then we'll look at those. We certainly don't implement every single feature request. I'm still not making somebody happy after 20 years by not putting in their ability to have different handicap based on the phase of the moon. And so there's some things that just won't happen. But in regards to social distance, if there are certain things in there, if you put the subject line social distance, that'll help capture some eyes. And then we can certainly take those suggestions, or if they're just questions, we'll be glad to answer those to you. And we may also be having a couple webinars here down the road as well too. So with that as well.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And then Lance, John's asking, just to be clear, scores will have to be put in manually into BLS if leagues bowl with a team on a pair or if they bowl on a single lane.
Can you stay home? Okay. So the boys will stay home with you because they didn't want to go.
Does that make sense? Okay, Brian, I don't know if we lost Lance, I hope not. But Brian, can you confirm this for John?
It's going to depend on if it's been, I mean, the whole idea behind some of the concepts that were on the screen are things that are being worked on or that will be implemented in 2021. If those things are done, then obviously they would be imported automatically. If they're not, then yes, they would have to manually be put into BLS.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering that. And unfortunately, I think we might have lost.
I think we might have lost Lance. Yep.
Lance, but that's okay. I had already thought about having 4-man teams bowl in 2 shifts and a pair of lanes. I am guessing that we will be manually entering scores from the recaps.
Again, it's going to depend on
Yeah.
how it's implemented. Keep in mind that if you're sending it out, 4-man teams bowl in 2 shifts. If you're talking about 1 shift bowling and the other shift bowling, right now, in regards to the way some of that stuff is, you would definitely have to do it by hand. But keep in mind, once we implement some of the pieces into 2021 for this upcoming season, that should be able to be hopefully handled by BLS.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Brian, for that. Allison, is it possible to see the recording of the webinar as I got the time changing? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to walk you through here in a minute the resources that we have available and where the recording of the webinar is going to be posted. Lance, welcome back. Sorry we missed you for a minute. And let me see, I do believe that we have answered all of the questions at this point in time. Again, if you have any questions for CDE and for Lance, or any suggestions or ideas, feel free to contact them at help@cdesoftware.com. And I'm going to walk you through some of the resources that we have available from CubicAMF and things that you can look into and information that would be beneficial at this time. So I'm quickly going to take us here to our CubicAMF.com. Here you have resources for COVID-19 link, or you can simply click on the support page where you will find your CubicAMF eShop and tech support customer portal that's available to you 24/7. And then from here, again, you can access the resource center for COVID-19. Again, tons of resources available. First, let me talk to you about the free reopening tech support. As you are preparing to reopen, or you might have already, if you have any questions or challenges, if you would like to schedule a call, ask any questions, get assistance during your reopening, I highly encourage you to contact our technical support by clicking on this link and completing the online form. Once you do that, one of our technicians will contact you to schedule an appointment. They're still working. Even during this challenging time, they've been working very hard, not only assisting customers with technical issues, but being proactive and finding ways to assist you with best practices and support for a smooth reopening. And they've made themselves available for appointments to assist you through this. I know some customers have shared some concerns that they've never had to shut down their center, and now their equipment's been turned off for extended period of time. So our tech support is there to help you throughout this. Again, if you can, just fill out this online form and one of them will certainly get in touch with you. Beyond the frame, if you access this area, you will find the recordings of our previous webinars. Allison, you just asked a minute ago, a recording of this webinar will be posted within typically a couple of hours after the live webinar. And in addition to that, you will find our upcoming schedule for the webinars. Next week, we are going to host Taylor Media that's been working with BPAA, and they're going to review your media preparedness for reopening. I'm sure they will share some best practices and ideas. And then the following week, we're going to, on June 3rd, we're going to continue with part 2, league bowling, and we're going to ask a few proprietors to join us for that webinar and share some of their ideas and what they intend to do. And if they had a chance to reopen already, I'm sure they'll share some of their stories as well. And then on the bottom of this page, you will find our blog posts. Up until recently, this was an exclusive blog for our best X customers, but recently we have made it available to all of our customers. Tons of useful resources and material you can find in here, so I strongly encourage you to check it out. In addition to Beyond the Frame, we have our reopening marketing kit that's been made available here, I do believe last week. It's complete with reopening guide, social media posts, in-center monitor ads, templates, signage, labels, you name it. Tons of valuable material in here. You can download the kit directly from here. Again, tons of resources that can help you as you're getting ready to reopen and in the first weeks of being open, and then maintain your center. Again, tons of material and documents on booting procedures, standalone booting procedures, maintenance checklists, care of some of the Cubic AMF equipment, things along those lines. And for our international customers, there are resources in different languages as well. Again, cubicamf.com, Customer Resource Center, COVID-19. Tons of resources you will find in there. And let me just point you down to the bottom. For your convenience, there are links to other resources such as IAPA, BPAA, SBA, again, CDC resources for all of your up-to-date information regarding COVID-19, anything in regards to that, any new information that they obviously learn as we go along through this process will be made available in here. So again, for your convenience, it is placed on the towards the bottom of the resources page. In addition to this, our Cubic AMF Worldwide Facebook page, and of course our Beyond the Frame Facebook group, dedicated to supporting our bowling centers, We host 2 live shows a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 3 p.m. Again, tons of useful resources, examples, success stories of how some bowling centers are able to take advantage of the current situation and still leverage their business. Yesterday, for example, we had Chad Murphy, the executive director of USBC, on Facebook Live with Jay Nephew yesterday. There's a recording of that. If you haven't done so already, or if you haven't had a chance to participate live, I encourage you to check it out. It was a fantastic interview, and tomorrow on Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will interview Reggie Frederick with Chalet Bowl, and he will also share how his business is preparing to reopen and how he expects that to impact his league business. So I would definitely recommend tuning in for that. And let me just double check really quickly if we have any new questions that have come in. None at this point in time. Lance, Brian, I want to thank you so much for participating today and for sharing all of your insights and expertise. Is there anything else you want to share with our participants today?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out to the seminar and with the webinar here. And again, appreciate the use of ELS, and we want to continue to help make this a valuable tool for your center and your leagues. And again, if any questions, please feel free to direct them to us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lance, again for your time. We know you've been quite busy working on a lot of these things, so it's very much appreciated that you can join us for a little bit today. Brian, anything on your end?
I would just say if there's anyone out there that has a concept in regards to league that might work during this time, if you want to send something either Cubic AMF or to CDE Software directly in regards to that, if you have an idea that something potential could be utilized by more folks in the business, certainly don't hesitate to reach out to us in regards to it, because certainly there's many things that you guys do or think of that we might not. So if there's something out there that you're thinking of that might be beneficial, certainly appreciate the feedback, and certainly something we would be willing to pass on to the other customers as well.
Absolutely, Brian. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. I am looking forward to hearing some success stories on league bowling, Brian, from your center once you finally open again, and of course from all of our customers as well. Until next week, we hope that you all stay healthy and well. We hope that you join us for next week's webinar and the following week when we continue the topic of league bowling part 2. Hopefully we'll have some interesting stories from you from our proprietors that have already opened. And until then, again, stay healthy and well, and thank you again for joining us today. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.